Hi everyone, my name is Tracy Dunlop and I'm your host for today's Big Health Life Reimagined episode. Today's panel is all about men's mental health and the issues, challenges and the future of this issue. Firstly, I'd like to introduce our panel we have today. So first up, we have Rebecca Hart from Psychology of Melbourne. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, my name's Beck and I've been a psychologist now for 15 years at Psychology of Melbourne. And more recently, I've been working with my colleagues to address the issue of male mental health. Now, mental health in males is something that I hold really close to my heart due to having lost family members from the illness. I decided to use the position I'm in with my career to do further research on this huge issue.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Beck. We are really sorry to hear about your loss. So let's hope that we can make the changes that we need to improve the mental health of males. Up next, we have Alice Birmingham from the Victorian Department of Health. Welcome, Alice.
Hi Tracy, thank you for that. So I'm Alice. I'm currently working here in the Department of Health in Victoria. Over the past year, my team and I have been collecting data around mental health and wellbeing. We've developed some strategies to improve mental health, particularly in lower socioeconomic and rural areas of Victoria. And we've also been involved in the development of the mental health tax.
We now have Jess Ellis that joins us from a very important organisation called Australian Men's Health Forum. Thanks for joining us, Jess.
Thank you for having me. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Jess Ellis and I'm currently a board member of the Australian Men's Health Forum. This great organisation that I'm lucky enough to work for aims to collect data in order to tackle a number of social factors that do impact men's health. Our goal is to create a healthier future in which males can look after their physical and mental health. Individuals can donate as well as become a member of our forum to express concerns and feelings that they might have about male mental health.
That sounds fantastic, Jess. Can't wait to hear more from you later on. Next up, we have Taylor, who is a teacher and guidance counsellor from Summer Heights High School, a public southeast Melbourne school.
Hi Tracy, thank you for that. I'm a teacher at Summer Heights High here in Victoria's northeast and have a background of working closely with adolescents who are suffering from mental health issues.
Everyone appearing on our panel today brings with them an abundance of knowledge that will contribute to a well-needed conversation on the mental health of males. So, to start things off today, we're going to go to our psychologist to gain an understanding as to what mental health is and the relation it has to the issue at hand.
Defining mental health in a few sentences can actually be quite difficult, but according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realises their own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully in their own community, and can make contributions to their community as well. This, however, is a very brief definition for something that is such of a huge and broad topic. Males do suffer severely every day from mental health, and this is unfortunately due to a thing called stigma. Now, stigma is something that is constructed and reconstructed by society. It can be known as a mark or a blemish on oneself. The individual can then be labelled and defined by that mark and is viewed by society in a negative light. One of the most prominent stigmas that society has constructed is the idea that males are weak if they show emotion or feelings. The idea that males can't reach out for help as it goes against the hegemonic masculinity and what it means to be a male. This is a huge problem and why we see so many frightening statistics.
On the topic of statistics, we might now head over to Jess from Australian Men's Health Forum to help talk us through some of the statistics that we find in relation to male mental health.
Yeah, definitely. The statistics that we discover over at Australian Men's Health Forum are frightening to say the least. As Beck mentioned previously, stigma can often lead to males being reluctant to reach out for help, which in turn can lead to suicide. According to our own data back in 2019, suicide was the biggest killer for men under the age of 55 within Australia. And for Victoria in particular, we found that 3 in 4 males do commit suicide as a result of mental illness. We tend to compare our data to the opposite gender, which in this case is females. And when comparing our data to females, we found that 10.1 more males per 100,000 population committed suicide due to poor mental health. Along with these suicide statistics, we have data on how likely men are to reach out for help compared to females. We found that females were twice as likely to reach out for help in comparison to males. These statistics can be very confronting. However, They need to be known and heard in order to try and reduce the ever-growing stigma and issues that surround males and their mental health.
The word issues has been mentioned both in the paper and the panel. Could you walk us through some of the individual issues that could further exacerbate the issue of poor mental health for males, Beck?
So yes, there are a few issues that we've highlighted within this paper that contribute to the poor mental health of males. The issue of stigma has already been spoken about, but the idea of gender inequalities is something that is closely linked with stigma that must be addressed as well. As Jess mentioned earlier, females are twice as likely to reach out for help and guidance in comparison to males. This is a result of females not having much stigma around their mental health, as it isn't seen to be weak for a female to ask for help. In some situations, females can actually be praised or commended for them reaching out for help, whereas if a male was to do so, they could be labelled as soft or a sook. This again circles back to the idea of hegemonic masculinity. Now, in terms of education, I believe Taylor will talk more about this later on, but it's also something that can have a negative impact on male mental health. In research that was conducted by our staff at Psychology Melbourne, we found that 1 in 10 schools did not teach the topic of male mental health at all. Now that is very frightening because children do 90% of their learning at school. So this is where they need to be learning about the stigmas and how mental health can appear, what signs they can look for, and how they can help themselves and others in their lives. As mentioned, Taylor will go further into that rabbit hole a little bit later on. Cost and socioeconomic is something that is a major issue that I hear about. The idea that men can't reach out for help due to their socioeconomic status and their location is really hard to hear as a psychologist. At Psychology Melbourne, though, we do support our clients as best as we can. However, there are many more individuals out there that aren't getting supported, which is something that needs to change.
Now, Beck, you're talking a lot about the stigma associated with men's mental health here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Alice, your department is doing a lot of research about this, is it not?
Yeah, you're completely right here, Tracy, and what Beck and even Jess have mentioned in relation to stigma is pretty much spot on to what we found as well. So there are many aspects that play a key role in shaping men's behaviours. You've got social attitudes as an influence, such as the types of masculinity, homophobia and transphobia, the acceptance of violence between men, and restricted help seeking. As it's been said, masculinity is a really big issue, and this idea that males have to be masculine is often drilled into some children from a really young age, yet it is a really big risk factor for a lot of mental health issues amongst men. So because of the stigma associated with men's mental health, men are less likely to recognise symptoms of mental health disorders and are even less likely to report these symptoms to their doctor. This avoidance or denial of mental health, again, all comes from the stigma, and the key to improving this area starts with reducing that stigma.
Thanks for that, Alice. Now, the issue of cost and socioeconomic status was mentioned by Beck previously, Alice. Are you able to elaborate further on this and explain to us the severity of the issue?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our department has recently done some extensive research on men's mental health and well-being this year, and a common trend that we found across our state is that areas of lower socioeconomic status have an extremely reduced life expectancy rate due to things like anxiety, trauma and depression. We found that these disorders, along with having an increased prevalence of health risk behaviours, really put these men at a higher risk of developing future mental health problems. The problem is, though, being in these lower socioeconomic and often rural settings, these men either don't have access to or can't afford essential health services which can actually help them. Another thing that we found in these areas is that there is not a lot of acceptance of men's mental health, with these areas reporting the lowest rates of men seeking help from professional health services, such as a GP or other community health services. So in order to tackle this problem, we've worked closely with the Victorian Health Minister in the creation of the Victorian Mental Health Tax. We hope to use the funding from this tax to help those areas that are in need of mental health services, and these lower socioeconomic areas that I just talked about are a perfect example of places that we plan on building more mental health services in.
So Alice, this mental health tax has been brought up a couple of times now. Would you like to explain a little bit more about it and what plans the government have for it?
Yeah, so with 3.1% of our Victorian population living with a mental health illness, Our health system only offers enough public specialised mental health clinics to cater for 1.1% of the population, giving us the lowest expenditure on mental health per capita within Australia. In adopting this approach, we aim to secure a dedicated and stable level of investment for our mental health system. The Commission report has established that the economic cost of poor mental health to Victoria is $14.2 billion a year. And whilst we acknowledge that it is going to be a challenge in gathering support from the public for this tax because of this cost, we're really hoping to supply the public with the real facts and solutions to see future success within our state's mental health system. In terms of men's mental health, we propose developing a better educational program for Victorian schools and tweaking the current Victorian curriculum to have a heavier focus on mental health in general. With our statistic finding that men visit health professionals a lot less frequently, especially men with mental health issues, something we found to be successful is taking services to men. Already we're finding in some lower socio-economic and rural areas that by offering these services in a non-traditional setting, such as the workplace, the pub or a sporting club, men's engagement with health services in these areas is rapidly improving. With more funding from this tax, we hope to expand this across all of Victoria rather than just in areas of extreme need. Another thing we plan to do is build services specific to the needs of the area. For example, Gippsland has one of the highest rates of suicide and unrecorded mental health issues amongst men, yet has the least amount of health services available in regional and rural Victoria. Therefore, using the funding from this tax, we want to establish more services that the people in these areas need and decrease these statistics.
Now, Taylor, Beck started talking briefly about the issues in relation to education. Are you able to further elaborate on the issues that you find within this education system?
Thanks, Tracy. So Victorian schools are really in need of a good mental health curriculum revamp, as there are many schools here in Victoria that very much teach the old ways when it comes to men's mental health. So the traditional teachings of suck it up terminology can really mess with a child's mind, especially when they are so young and their brains are still developing. You know, I see it almost every day. Something happens in the schoolyard or in a classroom where either a student or another teacher will dismiss a student's feelings and often say phrases such as, "Oh, chin up," or "you'll be okay, mate." So this dismissing of children's feelings is really where mental health issues can originate, and we as teachers need to ensure that we are supporting our children and encouraging all genders to speak up and ask for help. We need to be educating our youth so that they will have knowledge under their belt and to use for their entire life. Mental health problems, they don't discriminate. It can appear at any age, not just during schooling periods.
Now that we have brought to light all of the issues and negativity surrounding this important topic, let's go back to our panel members now and talk about the ways in which Victoria as a whole can tackle this issue. We're going to head over to the people now who are watching and asking questions via Croaky. Taylor, we're getting a lot of comments here about how can we help educate young males more. Would you care to elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so when I first started here at Summer Heights High 6 years ago, something we found really alarming was the number of students, particularly males, who really weren't engaging with any of the mental health topics, and a high majority of these students were later being diagnosed with some kind of mental health condition. Education is just such a key factor in shaping our health, yet we see Victorian statistics which suggest boys are 76% more likely to drop out of school, and of that 76%, 54% are more likely to develop a mental health condition sometime in their life. These statistics were really the motivating factor behind our school's desire to redo our mental health program and ensure we were giving students both information that was relevant to them and resources that they could use later on in life if they ever needed them. So we ended up teaming up with Beyond Blue, who came in and gave us teachers a session about how to teach mental health. And one of the things they suggested in regards to men's mental health was giving the boys a session on their own, once every couple of weeks, and really honing in on topics of men's mental health and areas of men's mental health in particular, which are statistically lower than females. So we're now in our third year of running this session, and we found that male students' engagement has dramatically improved within these sessions. We found that this increase in engagement is often due to because the boys feel more comfortable in this kind of environment. They can ask questions and what they're learning is really relevant to them. So something else that I believe is important to touch on as well while we're here is educating our teaching staff. Teachers out there would have very limited knowledge on the topic of mental health. I would know as a health teacher, when I first started my teaching, I was very much in the dark about mental health. I was having to teach in a kind of tokenistic way to tick a box rather than being passionate about the topic and trying to make a difference. So as I said, there would be heaps of teachers out there who would have the same issue I had. So ensuring there are a sufficient number of mental health professional development days also needs to be considered when talking about educating our youth. Since introducing the PD Day Beyond Blue put on, we've actually seen a really good engagement and involvement with mental health within the school and the staff. They understand the topic as well a lot more now and know how to better handle a lot of situations that once they didn't know how to handle.
Now, Alice, I want to head back to you as we are getting a lot of questions as to how the Victorian government is assisting this issue, especially in times of crisis such as the one we are in now with the coronavirus and everything that is happening.
Yeah, so obviously it has been a very challenging year for a lot of people, with coronavirus increasing anxiety and depression rates amongst Victorians due to things like job loss and isolation. With a lot of our studies around men's mental health commencing at the start of this year, it is unfortunate timing and we couldn't get all the data that we would have liked, but in saying that, what we have collected has allowed us to modify our goals as a department and instead cater for the current needs of Victorians. So like I mentioned earlier, we acknowledge, especially in this current climate, that the implementation of a mental health tax may not be appealing to all people, as it has the potential to increase taxes, but our data has found that we really need some kind of initiative in order to boost our mental health system here in Victoria, as it is the lowest rated in the country. We're also hoping more Victorians can sympathise with the people who need this tax the most during this time, as we've all struggled in some way or another with our mental health during this time. And as a department, we think it's really important we get people to be thinking about others during this time and what life is like in the shoes of people who are struggling the most.
Speaking of sympathy, we have a question here for you, Beck. What is it meant by sympathy? What did Alice mean by that? Are you able to help us out here?
Most definitely, Tracy. Putting up taxes is something that no one would like and or want. However, as mentioned in the paper, 45% of Australian adults will be affected by some sort of mental illness and or disorder at some stage within their life. That's a very high number, which would indicate that at some stage, either yourself or someone close to you could fall ill to mental illness. And that's what that tax money is used for. It's used to assist those people that are in need and that do need help in terms of their mental health. Either yourself or someone near and dear to you could actually really need those resources. So instead of looking at this tax as a negative thing, we need to be looking at it with a sympathetic and an empathetic lens, that we might not need it now, or the people close to us might not need it now, but there will be people out there that do need it, and one time that could be you or it could be a friend, and we need to make sure that we support not only the people that we know and ourselves, but everyone. We need to support everyone in Victoria, and now is a great time to do it.
Jess, we haven't heard from you in a while, so are you able to talk about how all of these initiatives and positive steps forward will help with the main overall issue of stigma?
Yeah, so the solutions and initiatives put forward both in this paper and the panel discussion are great. Each and every one of these ideas will help in reducing the overall factor of stigma. For example, if we're focusing on educating the students and the teachers, children will gain beneficial knowledge surrounding their mental health. They'll be able to understand and learn what a stigma is from a younger age, which will help give them the tools to confront that stigma if they were to stumble across it. Without this knowledge of stigma, students later on in life, may not know how to break that barrier, which can lead to obviously the poor mental health and even suicidal tendencies. The Victorian Department of Health has great initiatives and ideas that will assist the overall mental health of men. If more money is funded towards the mental health sector, then more can be done to help those most in need. Those that can't afford the healthcare will be able to access it, and those that live in an area in which they cannot access mental health can have it brought to them. Encouraging men to seek help by lowering the cost of mental health and bringing it to them will help break that stigma barrier. And hopefully we can start to live in a Victorian society that is free from discrimination and stigma when it comes to mental health, especially male mental health. That will hopefully allow the staff at Australian Men's Health Forum, including myself, to start to see more promising statistics, lower suicide rates, increasing in males asking for help and reaching out if they do need it. Now's the time to all get together and really, really try and break this stigma.
Wow, what an amazing panel discussion we've had here today to add to our Big Health series. So much information about the mental health of males and what we as a society can do to try and fix this huge issue that many males can face. I'd like to personally thank, on behalf of all of our viewers, our amazing panel that we've had here today. Thank you all for your expert opinions, and thank you for shedding a much needed light on a topic that's not always covered within the media. For more information on this issue, feel free to head back to our Vic Health website to find out more through our written paper. Thanks everyone.